There's almost no reason not to start your own studio because if you get a few guys together in a basement, you can whip out a movie.
Spent a lot of time watching cartoons as a kid, but it seemed like one of those things that was sort of unreachable. Like, well, if I could do anything, of course I'd want to make cartoons for a living, but that's just absurd, you know? That's not something that you grow up thinking. And that's probably why, you know, my first inkling was, well, I'm gonna be a doctor because, of course I'm gonna be a doctor because that's what everyone says you're supposed to do.
Watching cartoons as a kid, I always wanted to do cartoons, animation, everything like that. It was just something that really inspired me from when I was like 2 years old. And when I was 2 years old, I decided I want to do that. But I probably sounded more like, how would I do that?
Originally I wanted to go into like physics or robotic science, but I discovered that working with 3D Studio Max was all the things that I loved about programming, but with a lot more creative flow to it.
So the blank frame formed back in SCAD at the end of, what was it? It was like spring 2011 or something, where all of the people that were graduating had no idea what they were going to do, and we all got together with our teacher Jason and talked about, hey, what if we started a company, all 20 of us? And he said it was a bad idea.
And initially the blank frame started with about 20 people at a Skype conversation. You know, a lot of people were interested because there's, you know, not a lot of jobs out there right now. So if you want a job, you kind of have to make it yourself. Throughout the course of a few months, people started, you know, dropping off. People started kind of losing interest. And we went through a couple different ideas of what we wanted to do with the studio. Initially, we were thinking about making like an open source platform for animators all over the world to work on projects together. We eventually realized that what we needed to do was just make some shorts, either short films, short clips, whatever. We just needed to start working together. And to do that, we needed to be within a similar vicinity because at this point, people had graduated SCAD and were all over the country. So when I made the offer, you know, I own a house, you guys could come out here. How many people are interested? That's how the blank frame as it is today was formed. We've done some commercial work for, it was a website called Early Birds. We have a very close partnership with a point of sales dive store system called Diving Global. And Travis is actually, I believe, part of one of the owners of that company as well. So we have a really nice working relationship with them. We've done some stuff through a company called Graphic India that was producing work done by Grant Morrison and Stan Lee. And those projects were 18 Days, which is sort of a sci-fi retelling of the Indian epic myth, Mahabharata. And we also worked on Chakra the Invincible, which was a made-for-television movie that aired on Cartoon Network, and I believe it was Southeast Asia. Rough Cuts is a fun series to work on due to the fact that the three of us all have very different personalities. Rick doesn't ever want to work on something that he feels would be beneath him, honestly. And he doesn't want to focus on crass humor. He doesn't want to focus on cheap humor. Rick likes a lot of substance. He likes a lot of symbolism. He likes style. Basically things that are in black and white and no one talks and people just touch each other's faces. Like, you know, he's a total art house guy, and you know, it's good to have one of them. No more than one. Travis really digs the appeal side of things. You know, he likes things to be bright and shiny and just fun, really goofy and silly. I really like to focus, I'm a structuralist as far as writing goes. Like, I really like epic myths, I like epic tales, I like these old stories that have just lasted forever. And putting all of these together, we realized that we wanted to make a show that parents could watch with their kids that would have substance and meaning.
My interpretation of Rough Cuts, we all have a slightly different view of it, but it's about our two main characters. We have Franklin and Dusty. Dusty is the son of a media empire, and he wants so badly to prove to his father that he's worthy of that inheritance. And Franklin is a guy who knows all about this media empire. He's trying to take all that knowledge that he's gained over the years of just living in that community and do something with it. And Dusty has his ticket into that.
The squirrel is trying to inherit a company from his dad, and then like the dad's gonna give it to this weasel, who's obviously the bad guy, because weasels are pricks. So the weasel is gonna get the company. He's being like kind of really mean to Dusty, who's like the main character. And Dusty goes out and forms this crack team of filmmakers who are basically all kind of losers who all have daddy issues, so that they can together make films to shove it in the face of their dad.
And what we've come up with is a show that's really about father-child relationships. Every character in Rough Cuts, it always comes back to the relationship with their father, which is, I think a very universal theme. The show itself takes place in a studio. Think something sort of like maybe Disney or something like that. This studio that's been around forever. And it's gone through generations throughout this family, but the studio is kind of starting to lose its way, and the current owner is kind of like a Richard Branson figure. He's just, bigger than life, this completely ridiculous figure who rides around in a Zeppelin, just does whatever he wants. And his son, it's kind of time for him to take over the family business, but he sort of wants to take it back in a direction that the studio used to be, this kind of like old practical effects, these old space serial sci-fi, more colorful adventures, whereas the studio has kind of gone towards more like single camera or dual camera, like sitcoms, political debate shows, stuff like that. So Franklin and Dusty were initially conceived by a client, sort of, who came to us and asked us to basically create a show for him. He wanted to make a show that was like American Idol, but for animations, okay? He wanted us to design 3 judges who would then critique student-made films that people from all over the country would turn in.
And he's like, oh, maybe it'll be a fat guy, and he's got like popcorn, and he's trying to talk to the pretty lady, and he keeps spilling the popcorn all over himself. He's got mustard stains. It was a mess. So we kind of took the idea and we sort of reworked it a little bit, pitched it back to him.
And we didn't really agree on much as to what would make a good show. And we narrowed the 3 characters down to 2 characters, and we had kind of an older film critic and a younger guy who was just, really enthusiastic. He loved everything. So it was like the one was really easy to impress, the other was a hard nose and just really difficult to impress. And eventually the project just fizzled away. I mean, we never signed anything, he never paid us for our time, we put a lot of work into this, and we ended up with these 2 characters we really liked. And we kept talking about it. We were thinking about maybe doing an educational show about animation. We were thinking about maybe basically using Franklin and Dusty to interview animators in the field, to kind of give behind the scenes, maybe Franklin and Dusty go to Disney or to Pixar and they talk to them about making The Incredibles 2. Using animated characters to interview cartoonists about their animated films. And this all kind of evolved and turned into what would become Rough Cuts.
In 10 years, I hope that we have at least done something with ourselves. I think that we may have probably made a TV show, but perhaps it's not on TV. I don't know. I'm not a crystal ball person.
Started out, I had an answer to that. I knew that I wanted a studio working on our own stuff and maybe have a movie out in theaters and um, like our series on TV, maybe running 3 or 4 projects. But to be quite honest, we've moved so fast in so little time. My original 5-year plan, we ended up passing my goals within 6 months. And I wasn't anticipating that, and 10 years from now, who knows, we might be on a space station for all I know.
If we either got a movie or if we got a show within 10 years, I'd be thrilled. Anything more than that is gravy. But I mean, you know, at the end of the day, we started the studio because we want to tell stories and we want to have ownership. And there is that thrill of seeing your name on the big screen, right? Seeing your ideas, you hear actors say the words that you've written. There's such an intense feeling of ownership, and I hope that we can keep having that sense of ownership on a grander scale the longer we keep at this.